Honestly, when I first wrote this out, I labeled this, the reason you have writer's block is because you don't know what you're talking about. Which sounds really harsh, but I'm going to get into it. This is from the book Story by Robert McKee, which is probably one of the most referenced screenwriting books ever. Writers select a setting and launch a screenplay assuming a knowledge of their fictional world that they don't have. As they reach into their minds for material, they come up empty. So, where do they run? To films and TV, novels and plays with similar settings. From the works of other writers, they crib scenes we've seen before, paraphrase dialogue we've heard before, disguise characters we've met before, and pass them off as their own. Knowledge of and insight into the world of your story is fundamental to the achievement of originality and excellence. Often, why we experience writer's block is because we do not yet understand what we are writing about. And so there's all these questions, right? You're sitting down to write and you're kind of like, this is a scene that needs to happen. What needs to happen in it? It's like, these two characters need to talk. What do they talk about? Well, they need to talk about what is important to the characters and what's important to your story. And it needs to take place in a place that makes sense for their characters. And it all can lead back to you don't know what exactly you're trying to talk about. And I'm sure you've experienced this before, that as you work through a story, you end up getting more and more specific. You got to have intimate knowledge of your story world and your characters and your message. What are you trying to say? What ideas are you trying to bring in alignment when you don't actually know, when it's still all subconscious? You can't put it in order. You can't bring it into the front of your brain enough to actually put it down on paper into words, right? And so you just kind of muddle around like, well, this is the scene and the characters. Oh, there's a random idea. And then you get done with the scene and you're like, well, what next? Those characters kind of need to go over here. But what, it's like when you write that way, you kind of just end up wandering around in your brain until you happen upon the next idea. There isn't order brought to it. The key to this type of writer's block is research. Research. And like I said, this research ideally should happen before you try and draft your story, or that's my stance as a plotter. And maybe that's just a plotter's stance. If you are more of a discovery writer, or, what do we call them, a pantser? You write by the seat of your pants. Maybe that's the opposite way from you. You try to draft out. It's when you're drafting the story that the questions come up that will lead to deeper research. If that's true, you need to know that about yourself and actually build your process around that is how you function. I'm a plotter, which means development is the important piece for me. I'm going to spend so much more time in development than I ever do in drafting and scripting. Because I am trying to gain this knowledge and insight into the world of my story, this intimate knowledge of the characters and the story. Research is the key. And I'm going to talk about a few different forms of research here at the end when talking about writer's block in your message. So the definition of research is a diligent and systematic inquiry or investigation into a subject in order to discover or revise facts, theories, and applications, etc. Or it's to make an extensive investigation into. Okay? Research isn't just reading a couple books. Research is investigation, which is asking questions and looking for answers. Extensive investigation. So it's like one question will lead you down an avenue and you're like, oh, that's a question, and that's a question, and that's a question, and you keep going until you reach this point that Robert McKee is talking about of knowledge and insight, and you actually have something that you want to communicate and that you want to say. And what this process of investigation is doing is helping you bring order to those kind of intuitive first sparks and thoughts that you're having, right? So just like with everything else, research is unique to you. It's guided by your curiosity and your fascinations, your interest in this investigation. And so, embrace that idea of, I'm going to go deep into some of these things. I want to understand what I'm writing about, what I'm trying to communicate, what these characters are about, what they stand for, how they act. a deep knowledge and understanding. John, you're a pantser, and I personally find that developing the characters in the world they're in is a vital part of preparation. Yeah, after that you can release them into the world and record what happens. Yeah, exactly. You still have a development process, but it looks a little bit different because it's not so... as a plotter, I plot everything around the outcome. I know where the characters are going, and it's just about getting them there, right? And so I think the pantser is a different priority in development. It's about, like, when you saw my list, it was the character arcs and the character tactics and who these characters are was at the bottom of the list. I think as a pantser, that's probably going to be at the top of the list, and understanding how that development process is going to support you in how you write and what is interesting to you and what brings you joy, right? Because we are here to have joy and fulfillment in our process.